Okay, hey everybody, it's me, Yannick Glad, and today on The Glad Show, I'm talking with my friend Laura Brayton, and Laura is a holistic chiropractor, author, and speaker, and she is one of the most passionate people I know, and she is extremely passionate about supporting the health and wellness of families. And Dr. Brayton, she writes on health-related topics and is a lecturer for various holistic groups, including yoga studios, childbirth education centers, and new moms groups. And Laura has a podcast called Well-Adjusted Mama, where she educates and empowers women from preconception through early motherhood on wellness lifestyle. And actually in September 2017, last year, Laura gave birth to her son Finley in the most amazing experience of her life. And today we talk about how to handle it all, how to have it all, run a successful business and follow real passions while having a family, while growing a family, and how to stay insane and well and very centered while doing it all. So welcome, Laura. I'm happy to talk with you and happy to do this with you. We have been talking about it for a long time. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Yanni. I'm so happy to be here. This is a very important topic, and I'm really excited to discuss it and get some insight from it.
Absolutely. And I'm so curious about your own experience, but also what do you see with women, what's happening, when they're having a baby and, when they're getting pregnant, what's happening on the mind, because there's a lot of things happening physically. And of course, it's the first questions are what should I do with my business? What's happening to my career? How do I still keep going, while everything changes in my body, but after the baby comes? And how was it for you? What was the first things that you started doing, when you got pregnant?
Yeah, I'm going to even back up a little bit before that. So I've owned my own practice for 13 years now, and I've always been passionate about serving women in my community, specifically with preconception, pregnancy, postpartum care. So I was seeing lots of pregnant women in my practice and kind of witnessing what they were going through during their pregnancy, regarding their work life. A lot of them, I practice right next to New York City, so a lot of them, women living in my area at least, are very type A. They're extremely driven, they're focused, they're career oriented, and I could really see the challenges that would come up for them if they, for example, did not feel great during their pregnancy and had to, before even giving birth, step back from their business more than they had anticipated. Mm-hmm. Or if they had a more traumatic birth or a surgical birth that required more time of recovery afterwards. Mm-hmm. So sometimes what I would find is these women were very good at planning their life and had gone very far in their career because of that. And pregnancy and birth, there's things that just cannot be planned. There's certainly things you can do to support yourself and set yourself up for success. And then there's a lot of surrender. Yeah. There's a lot of just being vulnerable and just really letting go to certain ideals that you have and just really kind of riding the wave of motherhood. And it's really hard if you're used to being in control and knowing and anticipating how your life is going to work, because this is an area that there's a lot of things out of our control. So I was witnessing this and then got pregnant myself, luckily very easily. I didn't have challenges at the age of 39 of getting pregnant, which I was very grateful for. And I know it's because I did a lot of work on myself, preconception, detox, chiropractic, acupuncture, so, good nutritional foundation. So I was really setting myself up for success. I had a wonderful pregnancy. I felt very good. I had a wonderful birth team that was supporting my health during the pregnancy. And I had the most amazing experience of my life with the birth. But what came for me was the aftermath. So I think from what I also see with women is some women have, you know, hard pregnancies, some women have hard births, and some women have hard postpartum. And it's almost like something's off, you know, it's like hard to really have it all, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so for me, the challenge was breastfeeding, and it was something that I hadn't really anticipated. I was somewhat knowledgeable, and I had two great lactation consultants that I worked with, but it was a challenge for me. And I had to let go of some of my expectations of being able to exclusively breastfeed my child, you know, anywhere, just being able to nurse out whenever he was hungry and not having to always make sure I had formula to supplement in case I ran out with low milk supply, things like that, that were really very emotionally disturbing for me at first. And then recognizing that I was just, like all moms, doing the best that I can with where I was at with this journey. So I think that's something that really, you know, was eye-opening for me personally, and something that I have seen from lots of mothers I've worked with. But it's just like you really just don't know what's going to happen until you're in it, and really go along for the ride.
Absolutely. And when you have been working with so many women over 13 years, you know, have you seen the pattern that is like very much the same kind of feelings or emotions that women are going through while they are pregnant and getting ready to have a baby, or even in preconception phase?
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, once again, back to kind of the type of women that I see here, I see a lot of women in my practice are older. So they're usually over the age of 35. Their careers were their primary focus in their 20s. And now they're ready to start a family. And they're very excited to become mothers. So that's also the population that I tend to be around, is women that are willing to do whatever they need to do to get pregnant. And sometimes there's that lack of patience, even, where they're like, okay, I've been trying for a few months, it's not working, so I'm going to go right off for IUI, IVF. I'm going to pump my body with hormones, you know, and they're really, unfortunately, making decisions out of fear, as opposed to really trusting the divine timing, and also getting support from a team of holistic practitioners that can do a lot to help optimize fertility and allow for a natural conception, which is definitely the best way to create a healthy child. So, you know, ideally I get to see these women before they go down that rabbit hole, but sometimes they've already started the fertility process, and I'm complementing the care that they're receiving to help them conceive, and then certainly supporting them during the pregnancy. But I think what comes up is there is these different fears, like, will I be able to get pregnant? Will I feel sick during my pregnancy? Will my income be impacted by pregnancy and becoming a mother? You know, will I be a different person, like as a woman? Like, what's my role? What's my identity? These things are drastically shifting during pregnancy, motherhood journey. And it can be very scary for women, especially if they haven't put time into connecting with themselves and perhaps don't have a meditation practice. Then motherhood really puts that in your face, and you can't ignore it anymore. And, you know, I think it's a beautiful opportunity for growth. And that's really, I think, one of the biggest things for motherhood is we're able to dramatically grow ourselves as women and as people. But it can be hard work as well, and it can be painful at times.
Yeah. So while you have been working with a little bit older women, like at the age of 35, you know, do you know, is it because of it's not that easy to get pregnant like later, like when you are older, or why it's like, is it basically your people who find you are just like a little bit older? Because I'm just thinking, like, have you seen a difference in between with the younger moms and with your younger clients than the a little bit older clients? Like, are the fears different?
Yes. And, you know, what's interesting is just kind of the demographics of where I practice. a lot of women don't want to start families until they're a little bit older, which is different than in other parts of the United States and other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
I've even seen women in their 20s that were going through fertility treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Because they had these fears of not being able to get pregnant. So I think part of it is cultural, in the United States at least. I think that the medical model does create a lot of fear. And so especially like literally if you are over the age of 35, you're considered geriatric.
Yeah.
And man, I'll tell you what, I was so offended if I ever would have that conversation with a birth provider. I'm like, listen, I'm not geriatric, and I refuse to allow my age define the type of pregnancy and birth that I'm going to have.
Beautiful. And I think like that's
really
why
important.
that's one of the reasons why you have been so successful, like with everything. But you are also a big planner, right? You are kind of a type A in that sense, that you know
Yes.
exactly what you want and you plan a lot, and and what was like the fears in general? How do people get over it? I know like the fear is kind of a psychological, like one of the most biggest reasons why people are not able to have kids, because they're afraid of not having kids. Maybe they have got the miscarriage and they're afraid it's happening again.
Yes.
There's a lot in there. It's like a lot of how to deal with the body. What is your relationship with the body, and what is your relationship with the mind, because it's basically controlling the body from there. So how have you seen that people are able to release those fears and face those fears?
There's a lot of different awesome modalities that are available to get to your subconscious beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's really ideal for women to explore different ones to find what resonates with them. For myself, I've worked with Selfcare, I've worked with a hypnotherapist, even chiropractic adjustments, helping to connect the mind and body, I find is very powerful in optimizing nervous system function. Meditation is really valuable to kind of go deep and kind of see what comes up. But the reality is that we all have our subconscious beliefs that were formed when we were children. Mm-hmm. And subconscious beliefs can very much drive our current beliefs and current fears that you're discussing, because the fears actually may be illogical. They may not really be true, right? But our body and our mind believe that they're true. And so if we're not aware that they're there because they're subconscious, then they actually can run the show and create a lot of pain in our lives, because they're not giving us the outcome that consciously we want to create for ourselves. So I think it's very much worth doing the self-work on yourself as a woman. And that's going to benefit you in every area of your life. It's going to help your relationships, your career, your friendships, and certainly really setting you up for motherhood. But that's the thing. It's really, I think we were talking about these fears, and, in general, like a lot of women will make decisions before their pregnancy and throughout their pregnancy and birth because of fear. Like, oh, I'm going to have a C-section because I'm afraid of pushing a baby through my vagina and it's going to tear me up. Yeah. Or I'm going to have all of these tests done during my pregnancy because I'm afraid there might be something wrong with my baby. And I want to do all these invasive tests to ensure that my baby's okay. Yeah. These are some examples. And what I find is if a woman is empowered and she's really educated, meaning she's done her research, she's talked to different experts, and then she really sits on all this information and trusts her intuition of what the next step is for her and her baby, then she's going to always make the right decision. But that's not making a decision out of fear. That's making a decision out of empowerment and education. And that's what I'm very passionate about creating, is getting information out to women so they can make the best decision for themselves and their families.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. And what would you say, like, how to start working with the beliefs? Of course, like as a hypnotherapist, I work with that's my main job, to help people to change their beliefs. But
right.
It's like, what are the other ways that you have experienced that has been working for you or women you have worked with?
Right. So I think the first step is to recognize the belief, right? And sometimes working with a professional like a hypnotherapist
Mm-hmm.
or even certain psychotherapists can give you that reflection. But so you, because it's sometimes hard to see our own selves, right? But even just let's say personally for myself, with different personal development seminars I've gone to, Tony Robbins, I'm now in a place where I find I can catch myself a little bit sooner without necessarily even needing outside reflection. But as I'm kind of going through my day, you know, if something's kind of coming up, something in my body is feeling off, I can just take a step back and be like, what am I thinking about right now? What's going on? You know, it might be like, oh, I feel a little anxious in my heart. Okay, you know, like I'm not being chased by a tiger right now. So I'm technically safe, right? Nobody's trying to kill me. So why am I feeling this discomfort? This, like, what is going on? And it's allowing me to kind of be like, oh, I'm thinking about whatever. And then I think there's a beautiful process that, you know, Katie Byron has put out about, you know, is it the truth? Okay, I just had this thought, but is it true? You know, and is it really true? And you can really start to question these beliefs that, you know, pretty much your entire life you've never questioned. You just took them as fact. And now it's an opportunity to say, you know what, that's not true. And I want to change that belief. I want to shift that belief. But the first step is to recognize it, right? And that's the hardest step.
Releasing it already when you understand that it's not true. It's not really true, like when you understand it, like, and of course the mind chatters, like all kind of things. But it's beautiful that you just got the example that you first feel it in your body.
Yeah.
And of course, like, have you always felt like that? Are you very body sensitive, or how has it changed along the way when you have done the work, and especially with the baby, because you create a new kind of connection with your body?
Correct. So I think you're right. I think maybe I am more in touch with my body maybe than the person. And I actually credit lifelong chiropractic care with really helping me to be in tune with my body. It's my lifestyle. So it's part of it is, yes, receiving chiropractic adjustments, but the chiropractic lifestyle is also everything I'm doing when I'm not getting adjusted. So it's an awareness of really honoring my body and treating it like gold. So being very deliberate about the type of food I put in my body, the type of skincare products I use on my body, how I move my body. So exercise is a big part of my life. Pilates and bar classes and strength training and things like that. Like, so in other words, like what we would consider an overall, you know, well-rounded wellness lifestyle, I think is crucial to help women connect themselves to their bodies.
Yeah.
And when you're doing that, you are able to be more conscious of your thoughts. You're able to be more aware of a thought that's popping up that's not sitting well in your body, so to speak. It's a negative belief that is no longer serving you, and it's an opportunity to release it.
Yeah, that's so true. And there's so many women out there who are not having that healthy relationship with their bodies because they are afraid. Of course, it's changing during the pregnancy, but also like before that already. So what would be your advice, like how to get started? Because it all starts that you are able to get pregnant, that you have a kind of you're working with your beliefs, you're doing a little bit self-work, but you also creating this relationship and improving your relationship with your body and your self-image, like approving yourself as you are. So that's part of the pleasure. That's part of the well-being, right?
The self-love component is huge. You know, I can even remember, like, I'm grateful I've never had like body image issues or gone through an eating disorder that I know affects so many women. But when I was right around week 11, week 12 in my pregnancy, and I had always really was fit and healthy, and I was starting to get this like little pudge. And, you know, it looks like you're getting fat. And it's like in that area, and it doesn't look like a beautiful pregnant belly. It looks like, oh, she's kind of letting herself go, right? And I had to really like be like, wow, like, oh, my pants don't fit anymore, but I'm not really big enough for maternity clothes. It's like this very awkward stage that your body goes through as you're like getting ready to enter second trimester. And I had to do work around that body image stuff, which kind of surprised me that came up. And even, you know, my husband being like, oh, you know, you've put a few pounds on. I'm like, yes, of course I put a few pounds on. I'm pregnant with our child, you know? So kind of also like recognizing that I needed him to be supportive and loving in the things that he was saying, because when he would make a comment about me being a little heavier, that didn't make me feel good. You know?
There's a lot of emotions going through in your body and in your mind, of course, like while you have the hormones are changing and increasing.
Yeah.
And, which is interesting, you know, how was it for you, like in your relationship? Because quite often I see that women are not able to communicate what is really going on, you know, why they feel like how they feel, and especially like before getting pregnant, like preconception phase, or before even talking about kids. That can be extremely difficult topic for many relationships. And the communication part is so important, because the men, they have no idea what is going on in women's bodies.
Yes.
They have no idea. So only one way is to tell them and communicate and ask
You
them.
have to. I mean, and this sets up for a healthy, intimate relationship, no matter if it's children or whatever it is. And that was something I will tell you that, you know, I was newly married when I got pregnant and literally gave birth 3 days before our 1-year wedding anniversary. So it was a very intense year, you know, to kind of go through an engagement, a wedding, and pregnancy, and then giving birth. And what came up, and I'm really grateful for resources like the Gottmans, who are psychologists and they're married, and they wrote a book called And Baby Makes Three. And it literally talks about preserving marital intimacy after baby. And I remember like somebody recommending the book to me while I was pregnant. And I was like, oh, you know, I don't really know if this is going to apply to me. And I'll tell you what, yes, it did. Even during the pregnancy, because like any other major life event, it can put stress and tension on a relationship. Yeah. And so it really kind of shows you what the relationship is made out of. How good are your communication skills with your partner? Yeah. And my husband and I realized, oh, we have some room for improvement in this area. Like when we do have a disagreement, which is not that disagreements aren't normal and healthy in a marriage, mm-hmm. but there's healthy ways to disagree and there's unhealthy ways to disagree. Mm-hmm. And that's what I talk about in the book. It's bringing an awareness that when you are calling the person names, or you're making statements like you always do this, or things that are just cutting anyone down and not going to be healthy no matter who you're disagreeing with, especially your intimate partner. And then there's ways to be like, okay, this, what you said hurts me. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about that. And maybe we don't talk about it right this moment because we're very emotionally heated, but we need to have this conversation. And it needs to not be pushed under the covers. Like this needs to still be expressed and communicated. And men can't read our minds as much as we wish that they can't. They are very logical, analytical, and they need us to literally spell it out for them. Mm-hmm. Very basic, simple terms of what we need, because they want to win. They want to succeed. They want to make us happy. Absolutely. Sometimes they need a little guidance in how to do that. So I think resources like that can be very helpful, because they even give you exercises that you can do with your spouse to discuss, like maybe holidays that you had, your childhood holidays. Yeah. Remember, the two of you grew up in different households. So you had different holidays, different experiences with your parents, different memories, and now you're creating a new family together, and you have to decide as a team, a partnership, what do you want to bring from your childhood that was loving and positive and memorable, and what do you want to leave behind, and what new memories do you want to create together with your family?
Yeah. So there's also that, a lot of happening in your body. Then you had to take care of their relationship and, maybe do some improvements over there and improve your communication, how you feel about yourself, be very vulnerable and
Yes.
surrender. As you said, like surrendering is the main thing that.
Huge. And the hormonal component is no joke. I remember, over the years of having pregnant women in my office, and they're like, oh, baby brain, baby brain. And I'm like, I'm never going to have baby brain. Baby brain is real. And I'll tell you what, I think we're just hardwired that literally, no matter, even if you own the most successful business as a woman, when you're pregnant and even that postpartum phase, we're hardwired to put the needs of that baby first, whether it's an in utero baby or a baby in your arms, because that is survival. That's survival of the human species. So everything else takes a back step, and it's literally like whatever the baby needs.
Yeah.
So things like that you need to remember to do for your business just aren't a priority anymore when they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
The paradigm shift. And, for me, it was like kind of uncomfortable because I was so used to having this excellent memory and remembering whatever. And now I have to like keep more notes, and I have to be like document more, and I have to delegate more, because that's what I need now as a new mom, where my number one priority is nurturing my son, right? That is something that is like a main part of my to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, like we're so used to do, check, check, check. And it's like, well, where does raising my son come into play? Like, it's like he's a chunk of my to-do list now, and I want that to be the case. Like, I don't want to delegate that task to a caretaker.
Beautiful. And there's a lot of emotions that our women are going through in that phase. Of course, it's like how to prepare, to run a business, like when you get the baby, how do you continue your business? Like it depends. You had people who are helping you, but for people who are working for themselves, just like a one-woman shops or something, there's definitely going to be break. That's like, but how to prepare? What would you were doing? Like,
I mean, that's tough. Like if you're a one-woman show, you really almost have to plan a business exit strategy, which is so counterintuitive when you're used to just working on growth of your business. But you have to recognize, as much as we say women can have it all, you can't really have it all at the same time, right? That's the bottom line. And that is healthy, and that's normal. Mm-hmm. During pregnancy, you don't want to be having to work so hard on your business because your body is making a baby. So you want to be able to kind of slow down in that area. So if you're in a preconception stage, maybe that means that you're doing some financial planning so that you're not feeling stressed about maybe your business making a lower income, because you're in savings that will support you during the pregnancy and that postpartum period. And the same thing after giving birth, like, you don't want to have to just go back out and like rebuild your business and be like, okay, I'm done with my maternity leave. Let's, which is unpaid for us as entrepreneurs. Let's build and grow. It's like, it doesn't feel right. Like you want to just spend as much time with your new baby as possible. So I think for me, that's what really came up, is that financial planning component. Mm-hmm. And if you can, in my case, I have staff that I was able to have take over my practice and run it, and they did an excellent job. So if you are able to even get somebody even in maybe part-time to kind of help things go, that you've trained and they're, ready to take off, so that you're not feeling that you have to do all of the business and make a baby and take care of a baby. It would be too much.
Beautiful. And it's like, of course, we're not today talking about maternity leaves and non-existing maternity leaves that are in USA. We're not going to that, because I know career women who have got back to work, back to office, like 3 days after giving birth, and it's a bit crazy. I don't know how anyone can do that in physically already. It's so challenging.
Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of that honestly is not, a woman is not set up to go right back into business right after giving birth. We really are hardwired, and the hormones are so intense that you just literally, especially if you have a natural birth and you had natural oxytocin secreted in your brain during the birth process, you are so in love with this baby that you really, everything else is just not important at that moment. And that lasts for several weeks. Even for me, I went back to my office part-time at 5 weeks, and I felt like a little sad that I was going back. Part of me was really excited to get back to my office and back to my career and to that passion, and that definitely fuels me. But I really didn't want to leave my baby at home.
Yeah.
And, it was very emotional for me to have to go to my office. Once I felt great, but driving from my home to my office, I would be in tears most days. And so I think there's something to be said that, it's really important to respect that and to listen to that. And the other thing that's come up for me now, that my son's 7 months old, is, I'm back in my office even more. And it was really easy, I think also as entrepreneurs, is we can get really sucked into like our business.
Yeah.
And now I'm not in that like really intimate, like those first few months, I think the 3 months are the most intimate for postpartum. So I've kind of moved beyond that. And so it was just easy to get sucked into business. And I recognize, well, my son's still young. He's still changing and growing every day. He still needs me. Obviously, the nanny is not going to replace his mother. So I've literally had to look at my schedule and be like, where is time for just me and Finley? Yeah. Where him and I just spend a whole day together, and I really don't have anything I have to do for my business. And we can do whatever. We can walk on the waterfront. We can go meet a friend for lunch. We can go to the park. We can go to a music class. Like where I had to create that. Because if not, honestly, I think a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to this. You just fill up your schedule, right? If you have the childcare available, and my nanny is amazing, she's willing to work whenever I need her, then I literally had her working all the time. Yeah. But then, wait a second, what about me and my son and our relationship? So I had to take a step back. And I think that's the beauty as entrepreneurs, is we can create our own schedules. I needed to make a shift in that to make sure that my schedule, so I wasn't feeling that guilt and I wasn't feeling that remorse of, oh, I barely saw my baby today, like, well, I know tomorrow I'm going to spend the whole day with him,
That's beautiful. So it's constant adjustments, you need to do an alignment, like doing that every day. And of course, like you need to be really well connected with yourself so that you recognize those feelings. And a lot of moms, new moms and, moms who have like older kids and they deal a lot with the guilt and self-blame and judgment because they feel that they're never enough. There's always too much to do. How have you dealt with that, and what is your advice to these kind of women? Probably you see work like all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the guilt and the judgment are so real, and that's kind of what I was explaining earlier. It was like really coming up for me and making me feel like a lot of sadness, and I'm like, and I think that's almost a little bit like what the baby blues might be like. And I was like, you know what? I have so much to be happy and joyful for. And I'm realizing that the sadness is becoming because I feel a work-life imbalance. So I had to correct and continue. I think that's really that, going back to that alignment and looking at my schedule and being like, the schedule isn't working for me and I'm going to change it to find something that feels good so that I'm excited when I go to my office. And then I'm really excited when I have time with my baby as well. And recognizing that I'm not wanting to be a stay-at-home mom. I don't want to walk away from my business. So that's the answer. But making changes in my schedule, that was the answer for me. And I think that would be something that any woman entrepreneur can take a look at and recognize, even if you're used to doing it the same way for a long time, when you have a new baby, it's all about making changes and being really adaptable. Being adaptable is huge. Being like, okay, even though I've done it this way for a long time, my business has always operated on these hours. that doesn't work for my new situation. My family has different needs now. So for me, that even means like, I don't do early mornings. I used to do my 8 a.m.s. I'm not doing that because I would have to kill myself to get into my office after like not sleeping overnight. And I'm not going to be able to perform, professionally at the level that my patients deserve. So I think just being really comfortable with change, also recognizing that that is an ongoing process. So like what worked when my baby was a few weeks old is now different now that
that's what I feel like. It's constant changes and adjustments.
Constant.
Yeah.
And when he's a year old and maybe we get him in school a couple days a week, it's going to be another adjustment. And if we look to like buy a house and we're moving and living somewhere else, it's going to be another adjustment. And so just being kind of comfortable with change, I think, is a huge advantage for any new mom.
Absolutely. And then you're getting used to it, and then it happens almost like automatically when you understand that you can really change things that you don't have to control. And what is your advice? Because it's a lot about controlling, because we're so used to controlling everything, our daily routines, schedules, and everything changes. It's not about us anymore. As you said, like your family has different kind of needs.
Yeah.
So how has this, like all this changed you? You said like when we started talking, like it's a lot about growth, and what kind of a positive changes have you seen in yourself and of course in your family,
Yeah. So I think that, I think I'm a better communicator. I know my husband might not always agree with that, but I think it became so important to me that I improve in the way I communicate with him, with the caretaker of my son, with my staff, for example. I felt like that was an area of growth that was really important because I want all these people in my life are a major support system for me. So I want them to feel respected and loved and important, right? But I also need to clearly communicate my needs. And if my needs aren't being met, also communicate that, but from a loving, respectful way. So I think that's really important. And that was an edge for me. And I think the other thing is also, I shared earlier about kind of being comfortable with things not always going the way that you plan them to be. So there's a lot to be said, though, with kind of setting yourself up for success and then still having a backup plan. So, for example, back to breastfeeding and my supply, I found the best formula, which actually is German, as where you are right now. Holly organic goat's milk formula. I wanted to have a goat's milk formula as opposed to cow's milk because I felt like it was easier to digest. It's more similar to breast milk. And so if I needed to supplement because my milk supply was low or whatever, I wanted to have that as a backup. And I ordered at the end of my pregnancy to literally have it in my house because I knew my husband couldn't just go to the store and buy it. And that was a huge stress off when, day 3, the pediatrician came to our house and was like, your baby's lost more than 10% of his body weight. He's dehydrated. He needs to be supplemented. And even though I was so lucky, I was able to give him mostly breast milk those first 6 months of his life. I had to start supplementing from the very beginning to make sure that he was thriving. Yeah. And so I think that's also, and you hear these stories of women that are so like, I'm only going to breastfeed and I don't want to give my baby formula, that the babies in worst case scenarios have actually died because they were dehydrated. Yeah. So, it's just recognizing that as much as you hold on to an ideal and you want something for your baby, when things don't go the way they're planned, having a good backup will give you, like I did cry when the pediatrician told me that, but I was like, okay, I have the box right here. And that was a relief. I didn't have to then figure out what am I going to do? And, I need to get this formula shipped from Europe, which is going to take 3 days. I didn't have to deal with any of that. It was there and we used it and we figured it out.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And how about what I often see as well is like moms are putting themselves, they are the last item on the list, of their to-do list. So they never, they always giving and giving and giving. And I think
Yeah.
we talked about this earlier, like on the phone when you talk about it, and you recognize that in yourself too, that you kind of first like were forgetting your self-care and exercise and that kind of things and sleeping.
Yeah.
What's your input in that, how to change
Yeah.
it's like
Mama self-care is like absolute number one. And I've been preaching this in my office for years. And because I was so used to talking that talk, and I also, I want to add, before I was pregnant, I had a very good self-care routine in place. So that's something that any woman can start doing, is putting yourself first. And that includes your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual needs. So whatever that looks like for you. But for me, scheduling, my exercise, and really being mindful, once again, of the food that I was eating, and getting my regular chiropractic adjustments and acupuncture and massage. Like, these were all part of my schedule and my routine.
Yeah.
So they were fairly easy to continue once I was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Like a major lifestyle shift. It was like, oh, I'm just continuing what I've been doing for years to take care of myself. And then I would say during the pregnancy, additional things that I brought in was monthly hypnotherapy sessions, because I wanted to really focus on visualizing the birth.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Creating the birth of my dreams. And that's exactly what I did.
And seeing anything beforehand, which is of course like the way to prepare yourself and kind of manifest a beautiful, amazing.
Yeah, literally the birth was like recorded in my subconscious mind months before I actually gave birth. So when I went into labor, my body just literally followed that tape, and everything just, it was almost a better outcome, I think, than I could have imagined, which is really awesome. So, I think that the mama self-care is huge. And yes, of course, after you have a baby, your self-care routine will have to adjust.
Mm-hmm.
As you're up every 2 to 3 hours feeding a child. Your sleep is definitely going to be interrupted. I'm still at 7 months not getting always a full night's sleep and feeling, tired at times. But I have to be adaptable. So that means maybe I take more naps than I did before I had a child.
Yeah.
It really means that my exercise, it's there, but I don't push myself physically as hard as I did before getting pregnant, because that doesn't feel good for my body. I have to be gentle and recognize, yes, my body wants to move and exercise, but I'm not going for an 8-mile run, because that's not going to work for my body right now. And in fact, it could actually make things worse, right? So just, the other thing I would say is my social, like my time with friends, and, going for seminars and travel, all of that's kind of taking a back seat right now. I don't have the bandwidth to be able to do some of those things that I did before having a child. Even actually, I was able to do a lot of that during the pregnancy. And now that I have a baby, it's not a priority anymore. It means that, I'm, you kind of actually, I guess, rearrange your priorities. And that's okay too. It's not that like, oh, well, I've always done it this way, so I have to continue that. And if I fail at doing that, then that, I feel guilty. It's like, no, you can actually do things differently. And, you're nurturing a child. So if you don't have time to go out with your girlfriends every week like you did before, that's perfectly okay. And your friends will understand.
Yeah. So it requires a lot of patience and a lot of flexibility and adaptability. So that, but yeah, beautiful. So what are your 3 main things? What would be your advice that you would want to give to women who are planning to get pregnant, now pregnant, and who are business owners, career women? What would you say? What are the 3 most things that you have learned through your career and your own experiences?
Yeah. So number one is that self-care. Make your health a priority. And that is something that ideally you do start preconception. And it goes back to literally like just creating these good, healthy habits so that you're like, okay, I know that I, get a massage every 2 weeks, and that's in my calendar and it happens. Or whatever it is that you need to schedule for yourself, your time, your meditation practice. That's something that became a priority for me. And I think that just once again, when you're doing something new with your lifestyle, it creates some time to have it become a habit, right? They say up to 21 days. So I think that just being gentle and patient with yourself and not being overwhelmed, like I have to do all these things. It's just like one thing at a time that's creating these new healthy habits are going to certainly be helpful for a healthy pregnancy, but also going to help sustain you for a happy, healthy postpartum. And that's really important, that you're really going to have the opportunity to be happy and joyful with your baby, as opposed to overwhelmed, depressed, and sad. The second thing I think for women entrepreneurs specifically is having somewhat of, like I mentioned, a business exit strategy, even though if it's temporary, just recognizing that you're not going to be able to maintain your business at the same level during the end of the pregnancy and certainly right after having the baby. So having a plan in place that is going to take that into account, really important.
Yeah.
And the third thing I would say is create a support system. And I think, what I do a lot of education in my office is called a birth team. So a birth team essentially is a group of practitioners that are going to support your health and wellness during your pregnancy, at your birth, and in those postpartum weeks. And these are people like a maternity chiropractor, an acupuncturist, a prenatal massage therapist, prenatal yoga instructor, a doula, and they will all complement the birth provider, which is either an OBGYN or a midwife, and you're interviewing for all of these practitioners. So you're not just being like, oh, well, I've been seeing this GYN for the past 10 years for my Well Women exam, so I'm just going to stay with this practitioner for my birth. Well, maybe they're not the right practitioner to deliver your baby and support you during your pregnancy. So you can be very deliberate as a educated woman to meet with several practitioners and interview them and hire the person who matches your philosophy and who intuitively you feel the most comfortable with. And then surround yourself with that birth team who are going to help you in every area. And it's not just, once again, the physical health of your pregnancy, but it's these other components of the spiritual, mental, and emotional health as well, which are just as important. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just recognizing that a birth team is something that, I think a lot of women aren't even aware of how valuable that is. And how you literally can get so much love and support and guidance and education from these other practitioners after the birth. Lactation consultants are hugely helpful. A postpartum doula can be very helpful. And, just kind of figuring out, like, where are there gaps that you can use support in your life?
Absolutely. So asking help, receiving help, that's not always the easiest either for women. So we are, so used to take care of ourselves, and especially like when we're managing everything, the business and our life. And beautiful. Thank you so much. I think it's amazing, valuable information, and thank you for sharing your own experience. I think it's really helpful always to understand that other people are going through hard times as well. And I think it's never talk too much about those feelings that we all deal, and as a woman, and being a mom or not, but it's like we need this kind of information and support. So thank you, Laura.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.